I'd like to call this August 16th, 2022 meeting of the Monroe County Plan Commission to order. And would you please call the roll, Ms. Nestor Jelen?
Here.
Bernie Garitas,
Here.
Jeff McKim,
Here.
Dee Owens.
Here.
I'll come back to Dee. I see her. She's on.
She's
Zoom.
on.
Did we see her?
Okay.
Yeah, hello, I'm
We
here.
just can't hear her.
Yeah, Dee, we're unable to hear you.
I
The
can
box
hear
is
you.
lighting up as if it recognizes you speaking. You just might have your mic set to a different device.
I can hear Dee.
Yeah,
Can't hear Julie either.
Okay,
I hear Julie.
You hear two people? Would it be on our side then?
well, let the record reflect that Ms. Owens has stated in the chat that she's present.
Okay, Jerry Pittsford.
Here.
And Julie Thomas, I saw was also on Zoom.
Mhm.
Margaret Clemens.
Here,
Okay, so we have 5 members in person and 2 on Zoom, so we do have a quorum.
is there a motion to introduce the evidence?
So moved.
Okay, I move that the following items be introduced into the evidence: the Monroe County zoning ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County comprehensive plan as adopted and amended, the Monroe County subdivision control ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County Plan Commission rules of procedure as adopted and amended, and the cases that were legally advertised and scheduled for a hearing on tonight's agenda.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move, we approve the evidence as read.
Second.
I'll second, or.
Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Dee Owens.
Can you hear me
Madam
yet?
President, I'm sorry to interject here, but I'm pretty sure it stipulates pretty clear that they have to be able to be heard and seen to have a effective vote. So
I understand.
I would really cautious and even ask Mr. Schilling some guidance here, because we do have a quorum. We are just entering the evidence. I would be happy to delay until we fix the technical issues so they can participate, but it does stipulate very clear in the open door electronic permitting meeting that they have to be seen and heard to have an effective vote.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. And Mr. Schilling, is it okay if we try to resolve these technical difficulties? Since the difference in her vote at this moment doesn't matter, that she can turn off her computer, turn it back on, and try to get her
Might be on our
her
end.
audio back up and running, and the
It's
same is
not
true
me.
with Julie. While, can we move forward with the introduction of the meeting before we get to a real voting matter such as
stay where you
items
are,
on the
Dee.
agenda?
They'll figure it out.
Just want to have
Thank
that
you.
introduced into the record before you vote on something.
Yes, so if it's okay, Ms. Nestor Jelen, would you please call the roll for Commissioner Thomas and Ms. Owens so that, or on the introduction of the evidence, so they can get to resolving their technical difficulties?
Okay, and we don't need their vote technically in order to pass the introduction of
Yes.
evidence, so I can skip them for now if you'd like, and then
Okay.
we'll come back.
And
fine.
I'd just like to say, I think that it might be on our end since
It
both
is
of
on
them are
our
having
end.
problems.
So tech services has been communicating that their sound is okay. It's the room that they need to project. So they're working on it right now.
Okay,
So Dee and Julie, you guys are okay. It just, we need to fix
thank
it
you.
on our
Let's
end.
move along. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna skip Dee and Julie for the sake of the introduction of evidence and just have 5 members vote on it that are
Thank
here in
you.
person. So Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes,
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Okay, so 5-0 for the introduction of evidence.
a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. I'm gonna do the same as last time. Only calling the people in person until we resolve the technical issue. Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes,
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas.
Yes.
Okay, motion approved.
okay, so let's go forward with the motion to approve the minutes. If anyone would like to move to approve the minutes from the June 21st, 2022 meeting,
So moved.
or second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve June 21st, 2022 Plan Commission meeting minutes. Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes,
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas. Motion approved.
okay, so the first item on the agenda pertains to administrative business. And it is item number one, SMN 22 6, having to do with Peony Place minor subdivision preliminary plat extension. And this is in section 18 of Bloomington Township at 4811 and 4815 North Maple Grove Road. And I believe Ms. Behrman is listed as the planner, but Ms. Nestor Jelen, will you be
Yes,
presenting
I'll be
this?
covering for Tammy this evening.
Thank
So
you.
this is an administrative plat extension request for 2 years. The petitioner had approved, we had approved a preliminary plat for a minor subdivision of 2 lots on September 15th, 2020. So without final platting that, it would naturally expire on September 15th, 2022. So what they're asking for is one extension to go until September 15th, 2024. And if extended, all of the conditions of approval, the plat vacation and 3 waivers that were approved would also carry forward. So are there any questions? This is an administrative item, so if they were to have asked for more than 2 years, you would take public comment, but since this is just administrative for 2 years, you do not have to take public comment on this item.
Okay, do members of the Plan Commission have questions for the staff?
I just really hate being the stickler here, but I would really consider if we wanted to see if we could iron out the technical
We're ironing
issues.
them out as we
So
speak.
if they wanted to participate during this petition, I guess I just posed the question to.
We're on our way, but do you have questions for staff?
No, that's my only concern right now
Okay.
at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. And Ms. Owens and Commissioner Thomas, are you able to unmute yourselves at this point?
Yes.
Julie?
Can you hear me?
can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
I don't think that we can hear you, Julie, but we could
Oh, me
get
either.
comments from Dee and Julie in the chat.
Already done.
So
I
if
can't
there, can you see if there are comments?
Yes, Dee mentioned that she did not have any comments at this time.
Okay, and does Julie?
I don't believe so. She has not put anything in the chat.
Okay, so in the meantime, if Ms. Owens and Thomas would please turn on their video, we can entertain a motion and a vote and move on to the second item because they have indicated that they have no questions or for staff. So if you would kindly call is there a motion for approval or denial?
In the matter of case SMN 22 6, minor subdivision preliminary plat extension under chapter 854 7K. I move that we approve the 2-year extension to the Peony Place minor subdivision plat until August 16th, 2024.
Okay, and will you please call the roll in Ms. Owens and Commissioner Thomas, when it comes to you, if you would either give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, we would be most grateful.
Okay. And I'll note that the plat will be valid until September 15th, 2024, since the original plat was approved in September, actually. So let me just double check that date.
Oh, so it's
Oh,
not
so-
what was in the,
Okay, I see in
in
the
the
plat, it
packet.
says September or August 16th, 2024.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, sorry. So it's September 15th, 2024. Sorry for that error in the staff report.
okay,
So is that okay if I
yeah,
go ahead and call
September
the roll?
15th,
Okay.
2024.
So this is for a 2-year extension until September 15th, 2024 for SMN 22 6. A vote in favor is a vote to approve. Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes,
John Enright Randolph,
Yes.
D Owens.
Yes.
All
We
right.
can hear you,
Thank
Dee.
you.
Julie,
Okay, Yay.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas.
Yes.
All right, thank you all. It carries 7-0.
Okay, and I'd just like the record to reflect that everyone is visible, that everyone can be vocal, and that the comments have been recorded and noted, and that we're able to move along. So we move on now to unfinished business, and that item is PUO 21 P&G Planned Unit Outline Plan to rezone property from pre-existing business to a PUD concerning a parcel located in Perry Township at 5100 West Victor Pike. And I think Ms. Crecilius, this is your show right now. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so the property is 4.9 acres and is developed and operating as a Sunco gas station. The site is accessed from South Victor Pike and is approximately 500 feet from the intersection of South Victor Pike and South State Road 37. It's approximately 0.1 mile from the convergence of State Road 37 and Interstate 69. It's also approximately 0.3 miles north of the Dillman Road wastewater treatment plant. The property is zoned pre-existing business, which was created under the 1997 ordinance and is intended to accommodate commercial and business service uses that were in operation prior to the adoption of the current zoning ordinance. The petition site is adjacent to the agricultural zone, residential zoning like estate residential 1, and other zoning like light industrial, heavy industrial, and other sites also zoned pre-existing business. So the Monroe County Urbanizing Area Phase 1 identified the site as employment, which supports employment-oriented uses, including light industrial, manufacturing, development facilities, flexible office space, construction trades, warehousing, etc. Makua Phase 2 identified this area as South Side employment. This district includes lands with access to and high visibility from I-69 and State Road 37, and generally designates this employment land use type in the urbanizing area. Currently, the areas that are zoned South Side employment are largely undeveloped, with some existing office and industrial development and rural residential uses. Makua Phase 2 states that additional development should preserve landscape character and be sensitively buffered from nearby residential districts. So just a few sites from the staff site visit, a few photos from the site visit that was performed last year in 2021. So the earliest aerial imagery available is from around 1998, showing the use of a convenience store and truck parking. The county property report card lists 1990 as the construction date of the building and fuel canopy. Imagery from 2003 and 2005 shows the site and close to its current state and has generally remained the same for the last 20 years. In 2019, the planning department received a complaint regarding the site's brightness of exterior lights, truck idling, and noise. Upon review, staff determined that there had been an expansion of the parking area in the northeast side or upper right corner of the photo. The zoning inspector requested and received a use determination submission. The planning director at the time, Larry Wilson, determined that the site was previously a legal pre-existing non-conforming use of convenience store. Mr. Wilson then determined that the pre-existing non-conforming uses plus overnight parking would either be called truck stop travel plaza or a trucking terminal, as defined under chapter 802. Neither use is permitted in the pre-existing or PB zoning district. The site was unable to meet the conditions of either use, which could have allowed them to seek a rezone to a different district. The planning process available that would allow for the combination of uses on the site were to seek a rezone to a planned unit development or a PUD for this petition.
The petitioners state that the proposed uses within the planned unit outline plan do not resemble the extensive and intensive uses identified as the truck stop travel plaza conditional use of chapter 813 within the zoning ordinance. The outline plan has proposed the use of truck stop small. They state the character of the PUD would allow these uses because it represents the travel and vehicle uses adjacent to a principal arterial road. No existing zone would allow for the proposed mix of uses. The outline plan has provided design standards for the above uses and additionally limitations on expansion and intensification of those uses. The outline plan goes on to list some of the limitations. I will list those here. So the convenience mart food service is limited to the existing, which is approximately now 9,000 square feet. The restaurant, which they term small, is not to exceed 1,000 square feet. Future development would include an option for the main structure on the site to possibly add a second story addition, limited to no taller than 22 feet. The fuel canopies are listed as being would allow the existing canopies that's approximately 1,500 and 2,000 square feet. The outline plan includes a future development of electric vehicle charging station with an industry standard canopy or cover. For parking, they have proposed paving and striping and signage to designate truck parking spaces. Truck/equipment parking is to remain stone gravel. And they state that any paving deficiency is to be completed within 12 months. They have also designated certain amount of spaces for each type of parking. So they proposed 30 spaces for truck parking, 10 spaces for equipment, and 25 spaces for carpool, ride share, or employee parking, specifically on the west side of the property. Designated green space is required under the PUD requirements. So they've stated that it would be a minimum of 25% of the property with an easement to be dedicated to the Plan Commission or its designee, with the owner to maintain landscaping. There is an option for future development of a shelter house with exterior seating. It would be a poured concrete pad with room for 6 to 8 picnic tables. For landscaping for the site, the northeast boundary would be to maintain the existing evergreen tree line, maintain plantings along Victor Pike boundary, not to be fewer than 12 trees, and to maintain and replace as needed the existing scattered trees on the site. So this petition was heard by the Plan Review Committee last year on June 10th. The discussion included concerns regarding safety of drivers through Monroe County, since there are limited resources for overnight parking, and also concerns with nuisance fumes from truck idling. The illustration on the screen is from Exhibit 3, which illustrates nearby truck overnight parking locations. The petition site is currently listed as the only location with overnight parking in Monroe County. There were further discussions around the lack of rest stops along I-69 when construction took place, and that it was causing a lack of space for truck drivers to stop and rest. The petition was heard at the Historic Preservation Board on June 21st last year. The discussion there included some neighbor concerns that are similar to what was heard at the Plan Review Committee, and potential impact to the view shed of the Stip Bender Farm located to the south of the site. The Stip Bender Farm has an application pending at the state for a National Historic Register nomination. There's no update to that application as of this year. So the Plan Commission heard this as a preliminary hearing last year in July. There was information requested regarding the areas within the county that would reach the requirements of the conditional use truck stop travel plaza. Staff did do a spatial analysis into the potential locations and show that there were limited existing locations suitable for a truck stop as defined under the conditional use chapter 813. There have been a few letters of support that have been submitted to staff since the current packet was published. I will show those briefly on screen. So to date, letters of support and remonstrance, there are more than 230 listed supporters. There were 16 individual letters. That does not include the letters that I just showed you. That number also includes a 204 signature petition that was to allow the current operations of restaurant, convenience store, gas station, overnight parking to continue at the current level due to unmatched accessibility and offerings. To date, remonstrators are 8 individuals. So some of the reasonings listed for support and remonstrance are below. Reasons of support is that would be the only rest stop for 100+ miles, the safety of all users of highways for protecting drivers and allowing a rest stop, an increase in truck traffic within city or urban areas, parking for transit utility workers, a family-run safe establishment, saves drivers time and money, and trucks newer than 2010 have little to no fumes. Some reasons of remonstrance listed are hazardous cargo of trucks, adding new use of overnight parking, diesel exhaust, additional traffic on Victor Pike, and noise of trucks or vibration. So Chapter 811, requirements of approval. So the Plan Commission in its recommendation and the Board of Commissioners in its decision shall consider as many of the following as may be relevant to the specific proposal. 1, the extent to which the plan unit development meets the purpose of the zoning ordinance, the comprehensive plan, and any other adopted planning objectives of the county. 2, the extent to which the proposed plan meets the regulations, standards, and stated purpose of the planned unit development regulations. 3, the extent to which the proposed plan departs from the zoning and subdivision regulations otherwise applicable to the subject property, including but not limited to the density, dimension, bulk, use, required improvements and construction and design standards, and the reasons which such departures are or not deemed to be in the public interest. 4, the proposal will not be injurious to the public health, safety, and general welfare. 5, the physical design of the plan unit development and the extent to which it makes adequate provision for public services, provides adequate control over vehicle traffic, provides for and protects designated permanent open space, and furthers the amenities of light and air, recreation, and visual enjoyment. 6, the relationship and compatibility of the proposed plan to the adjacent properties and neighborhood, and whether the proposed plan would substantially interfere with the use or diminish the value of adjacent properties and neighborhoods. 7, the desirability of the proposed plan to the county's physical development, tax base, and economic well-being. The proposal, or 8, the proposal will not cause undue traffic congestion and can adequately be served by existing or programmed public facilities and services. 9, the proposal preserves significant ecological, natural, historical, and architectural resources to the extent possible. So for the public attending in person and in Zoom, the Plan Commission will vote to forward a positive or negative recommendation to the county commissioners. The county commissioners will hear the petition administratively and then as a final public hearing that will include public comment to be heard. Tonight's hearing is a final hearing for the Plan Commission, so one more meeting to be heard by the county commissioners. If this petition is withdrawn or is denied by the county commissioners, the site will be required to remove the non-conforming use of overnight truck parking and conform to the legal pre-existing non-conforming use of a convenience store. So staff has met with the petitioners and their representative as recently as June of this year to discuss the outline plan and the standards of approval for a PUD. Staff has identified 3 points listed above that would need to be addressed or adopted in order to gain staff support. So should the Plan Commission forward a positive recommendation, staff recommends the following conditions: prohibit overnight truck parking from idling, petitioner to propose a landscaping plan that includes screening to protect the view shed of the adjacent historic property, and that the entirety of the parking lot be paved per Chapter 806 standards, and parking plan submission to be reviewed by the county highway engineer. So staff recommends forwarding a negative recommendation to the county commissioners based on the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway Department and MS4 coordinator reports.
Thank you, Ms. Crecelius. I turn now to my colleagues here on the Plan Commission. Do you have questions for staff? Mr. McKim?
Yes, thank you. I guess, Mr. Ms. Nestor Jalen, and can you summarize what about this petition would actually, if approved, would actually change the conditions on the ground versus simply legitimizing that's already been occurring for the last 10 years or so, or more than 10 years?
If you approved it as it is proposed, not with any other additional standards?
Correct. Yeah, let's
Okay.
start there with what they're
Okay.
proposing.
Yeah, I think Ann did a good job of representing some of the changes that we had from the petitioner as on August 8th, they submitted a new outline plan. They were stating that there would be limited designated truck parking spaces. So I think that in a little bit of with some time from the petitioner's representative, they could better describe where those designated truck spaces would be. My assumption and my understanding from meeting with them is that they would like to park designated truck parking away from the proximity of Victor where there's nearby adjacent neighbors. And then I know that there was a proposal to include some landscaping, but also included in this PUO is to allow for a possible expansion of the primary structure to possibly include a second floor, some electric vehicle charging stations, but all of that would be required under a development plan that would need to meet the ordinance that is in effect.
Thank you.
Are there other questions for staff? Mr. Pittsburgh?
Yes, I do have a question. Does this work? I can't hear it. Oh, I've got to turn the red one off. Okay, that's why. Okay, not used to these new things. All right, I was trying to find the chapters that address truck plazas or overnight. What would accommodate overnight truck parking or a truck plaza? What chapters was that? in the
That
zoning
is
ordinance?
chapter 813.
813, okay. So if we use the standard in chapter 813 for the kind of use that petitioner is proposing, how many parcels within 1 mile of I-69 do you suppose would actually be able to meet those standards?
Just one moment while I find that info. I do have it. It's from. Okay. So the three large main requirements were that the property would be zoned heavy industrial, greater than 10 acres and within 2,000 feet of a major collector. We also included whether the property was developed or not. So the only property that met all three criteria was one at the location of South Old State Road 37 and south of the intersection at State Road 37.
Okay, so that's within a mile of I-69?
Within 2,000 feet of a major collector, yes.
Pardon?
Yes, it is within a mile.
Okay. All right. Well, a truck getting off of I-69 would then get on State Road 37, drive south to Old 37 and continue to this property. Correct? If that is the only place that meets the criteria, that's the one place Monroe County would provide for truckers, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make that clear. I also wondered, the requirement for protecting the view shed of the historic property, other than the fact that there's more traffic likely to be generated, what changes in the view shed? This building's been there since 1960 something? 80s, no, 80 something. All right. The view doesn't really change. There's been a 4-lane state highway adjacent to this historic property for 5 decades. So when we talk about the view shed of the historic property, I don't see a significant change occurring here. I do see a change in the amount of noise, the amount of traffic, diesel fumes, those things. But as far as the view shed issue, I don't see it. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Do you have questions, Mr. Veritas or Mr. Enright Randolph or Julie Thomas or? Yes, Commissioner Thomas.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to respond to Jerry's question because it's a good one. Adding a second floor, adding additional parking canopies definitely changes the view. I also think that while I understand what sounds to be, it's presented as altruistic motives for providing a truck stop. This is a business. And there is something that the state has not done. The state failed to provide rest stops on I-69, or the federal government, or both. And we're asking residents to accommodate that error. And I'm not sure that that's a fair thing to do. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Mr. Enright Randolph.
Thank you. This kind of goes back to Jerry's questions. And I guess I had it a little wrong. I thought there was really no place permitted in the county that would allow a truck plaza or truck stop / travel plaza without going through like a potential lot line adjustment or a rezone or acquiring multiple lots. But there's literally a 10-acre parcel out there that's zoned correctly, that has the same the needed frontage of a interstate or a highway. Like there's actually a lot out there, because maybe that's changed, but I just want to clarify that. Is that what you were saying, Ms. Corcelius?
Yes, there is one lot. The property is not developed. The site is being used, but it does not have developed infrastructure.
Okay. And I guess it goes back to, we don't have a small truck stop allowable use in any zone. So like, is it really in Monroe County's interest to create a 10-acre travel plaza / truck stop, or versus these smaller, mom and pop shops that allow limited trucks to stop overnight, get off the road safety, and that fit better with our character of what Monroe County, I think, intends with its comprehensive plan. I would hate to see that we force the hand of a developer to come and build on a 10-acre lot that hasn't been developed to put a truck stop in place because we aren't going to address the safety of the drivers on the road.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. Ms. Owens.
Thank you very much. I just would like to comment on, I've thought a lot about some of my previous comments, and I really don't, I haven't changed my mind on something, and that is to disallow truck idling is fine. To say that not all trucks newer than 2010 have to idle, that's fine. But I want to know who enforces that. We don't have the truck police. We don't have that going on. And that is what the remonstrators mostly talked about. I recently had occasion to be, I don't know how to say how many feet away, but quite a distance away from a truck that was just running their air conditioning for their vehicle. And it was very loud. And I don't think that's something that we can enforce. And so we can't put rules on places that can't be enforced. Another point is that there is other parking. Walmart allows parking if people want to sleep. Sam's with permission. I'm sure there are another place or two, but those are right off the highway with exits and entrances. Semis go in and out of there all the time with stuff that they're bringing to sell and so forth. So it just seems to me that this is just not exactly the right place for this, and that in the past, as I was reading the materials, I noticed that there was a lawsuit back in the 90s from this plan commission, trying to bring this property into compliance. And then now since then, they've actually done some building without permission, I think I heard. And so it has to be a previous non-conforming use. That doesn't strike me as being able to enforce whatever rules that we would lay down on that. So those are my comments on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Owens. So, Mr. Garitas?
If it's denied, what changes?
The overnight parking would have to be removed.
Okay, so it's now, yes, Mr.
Just to follow up on that, but the convenience store could still remain.
McKim?
Yes, and there's adequate proof from aerial imagery that truck parking has been there. It is only the intensification of overnight parking.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Garitas?
So the petitioner stated there's 5 to 10% of the west, there's 5 to 10% of the west side of the parking or of the lot next to I-69 that will be used for overnight parking. Am I correct in that?
That outline statement where they use percentages has been updated to include a number of spaces, parking.
That's where I was going. How many what's that count? I couldn't come into it very quickly. I don't remember reading it.
You had that on one of
Okay.
your slides, didn't you?
I do. So the truck parking would be 30 spaces, equipment 10, and a carpool, rideshare, employee spaces would be 25 spaces.
Thanks.
Okay, without further delay, I'd like to turn to Mr. Carmen. And just if you would kindly sign in. And as you know, you'll have 15 minutes.
My name is Mike Carm, representing the petitioner P&G Associates. P&G Associates is Cherian and Rosie Pilo, the owners and operators of the LLC, which has the station. They bought it in 2005 from Bill Thomas and his partner, Tom Busey, who had operated it under Sunmart Investments. They had bought the property in 1996 from Alan Terry. Alan Terry developed the truck stop, and I'm going to use that term guardedly because it's causing trouble to use that term, but we'll get back to that. But Alan Terry bought the property in about 1987 on contract, took a deed in 1988 and developed the truck stop. You have Alan's deceased now. You have, because it was part of the, it was submitted for other reasons, but it became part of this packet on a prior edition, a statement from Beverly Terry, his widow, who was active with him in the property. She was full-time employed, but she did books and records, was there every day when it was operating. And she talked openly about Alan specifically courting the overnight truck parking as part of their business model, because they would buy fuel in the mornings and they would buy items in their small store. The store, when it started with them for primarily some foods, but primarily as workwear, jeans, work shoes, boots, that type of things. And they had a market for sells that to the truck drivers. That continued when they developed it. The amount of parking, you saw a very early photograph, 1998, I believe was the date of that photograph. So it had been in operation for some, but Bill Thomas and Tom Busey continued the truck parking, probably expanded a little bit, cleaned it up, got a little bit more orderly than what Alan did. Terry told me that when the trucks parked for them, for the most part, they just park parallel along edges of the drive as opposed to in designated slots. Pilo, Cherian is committed to even getting that more orderly and does, and we can, with some signage and striping, we think we can even get it more orderly. So the requested 30 spaces is not a daily event. The truck parking overnight varies by the day of the week. Weekends are not much of an issue. You don't have the truck traffic on the highway during that much. And deliveries to stores, you have some, but certainly not what it is during the week. Tuesday night's probably the heaviest night on a regular basis. The other night, there were 10 trucks. Saying there's 30 doesn't mean there'll be 30 parked there. They're empty spaces. It accommodates more than 10 as it is right now, but it's not to say that 30 will be a regular thing. I want to, because 50 minutes is going to go real fast. I want to touch base on a few things that have been said to dispel them. And then we'll get back to why the petition should be approved and what it really is all about. there was the reference to the exterior seating. You see a word got dropped out. It said seating 6 to 8 at picnic tables. That was not meant to say 6 to 8 picnic tables, 6 to 8 seating at picnic tables, because it's just a small shelter. That's not, we're not trying to build the fairgrounds out there and with that kind of seating. The apartment, I noticed that Ms. Thomas objected to view shed issues, which you can't talk about sacred cows. I'll tell you that concept about the view shed and harming the farm is a fallacy. It's just another way to call it. As has already been noted, this has been ongoing since 1988. The amount of parking has not really varied since 2005. It's not been expanded. It's cleaned up and a little bit more orderly, but the parking and the equipment parking has been an ongoing fact of life out there for nearly 30 years. The first few years, it was fewer than what it developed over time. The view shed is not changing, has not changed, and will not be changing. If anything, the view shed has become somewhat limited by the amount of mature trees that happen to be on the farm. But there's along Victor Pike, there's quite a row of mature trees that pretty much dominates the view shed from the farm. But as other things, I don't know if Walmart allows the parking lot. I actually looked in that and was told no, but some think they do. But I don't know that there's any gain or positive say, not here, just do it someplace else. There are homes and residences right off the parking lot of Walmart, just like there's the fact they're closer to the Walmart parking lot at Walmart than they are to this site and the parking on this site. Just go out and look. It is no one's job on this plan commission. There's no job for the planning staff to go out and physically inspect the site at 9 o'clock at night and see what's going on. It's not your job. You don't have to do that, but you didn't. Nobody did it for you. No zoning inspector's done it. No member of staff's done it. Nobody's going out there to see what is really going on. What do you smell? What do you hear? What do you see? We did. I have. I've gone out there and I've gone to the trucks and I've got guys out of cabs to interview them. Why are you parking here? What's going on? I park here because I'm doing deliveries at your stores at 7 o'clock in the morning. What do you mean you don't want me to park here? You want your product? You want to go to your stores and buy it? Then you've got to allow me someplace to deliver it because I don't have any place else to go. I'm going to park here. I'll make my deliveries at 7 in the morning and then I'm heading home. And before I leave, I'll fuel up and I'll be buying some food to eat on the road. That's what's going on. And that's part of it. And that's been a business model for 30 years. And the remonstrators, there's one that's essentially in your packet. You can get the name off if you want, happens to be a retired attorney and he's a remonstrator, but his letter is interesting. Now, as a retired attorney, I would assume he's careful with his word choices. So I'll take face value what he says, but what it does say, dear Plan Commission members, pre-existing commercial uses are designed to accommodate in-place business, et cetera. We're talking about he and his wife who live not immediately adjacent, but down the road just a little ways. We're downhill from the gas station, the convenience store at 5100 South Victor Pike. We've used it for 30 years. It's been there. It's an asset to our community, to our neighborhood. We support its continuation as is. Important words, as is, because that's all we're asking for. That is absolutely all we're asking for, is to be able to continue what has been being done as is. Now, I'll come back about the apartment. Now, to be fair, the letter goes on and objects to this, but it objects in a way that talks about being proposed expansion of the permitted uses. The proposed expansion of permitted uses, the outdoor seating, formalize the carpooling that all parking already goes on. It goes on at every gas station. You go up 39 and 67, you see it. The BP out at Stanford Road for years. I would just see 6, 8, 10 cars that would park there along the edge of the drive, carpool and drive to Indianapolis. And so we have some of that. So that is actually in here as a listed permitted use to allow that to continue. So it's an environmental issue, nothing else, to limit the amount of cars on the road. But the only other real use new is proposed apartment as an accessory use. If that's a problem, or if you shed or anything else, take it off, scrap it. We don't need it. That is not, there's no intention to build the apartment now. If you look at it, it was suggested as proposed accessory use, meaning, and is specific, restricted to owner or employee occupied. It is entirely possible as we go forward in this economy and post-pandemic that somebody will want to live there and work there at the same time, or buy the station and wants to be an owner, operator, manager and live on site. So we proposed a possible accessory apartment limited to 2-bedroom and limited for that as an accessory use. If that's offensive as a proposed possible use, then take it off, because that has nothing to do with current operations. That's just looking down the road to the future. So let's get back to the petition and why I'm concerned about the word truck stop. You know, to turn to your questions, I remember the laughter I got from Larry about the ordinance when it was written about travel plaza truck stops. 69 is coming. He foresaw it. There will be somebody's going to want to do it. So we're going to write an ordinance that allows it, but they're going to have a tough time finding a place they can do it. And that's exactly what you got. You've got an ordinance that's so onerous for those travel plazas will not be one built in Monroe County. And that was intentional, at least on Larry's part. I can't say county commissioners or you when you reviewed and recommended adoption of that definition. But I'm troubled by the continued focus on truck stop. Because in the petitioner statement, it was in there before, and I repeated in the amended statement now, I listed those things that are out of your definition about travel plaza, truck stop, all the type of uses, facilities and things that would be as part of that. And then what we actually do, and there's almost no comparison. Fueling, the convenience store, and the truck parking. We are not a truck stop. We are not a travel plaza. The problem is your ordinance only has a one size fits all. You're either a truck stop or you're nothing. And there's no in between. And so I tried to craft a name. I called it truck stop small. I had to give it a name. Larry kept calling it a truck stop because to him, truck stop meant truck parking. And if you're doing truck parking, therefore you are a truck stop. And that's really important because there's a lot of things. I got 5 minutes. Okay. There's a lot of things I'd like to talk about. I'm not going to have time to. It's in the petition. If you've read it, most petition is not new. But I want to address the issue, the history of truck parking overnight at this location, because it's important. And I did a freedom of records request. We did a use determination request to the planning department, to Larry. He did his opine, your truck stop and truck parking, and it's not allowed. By pure application of the zoning ordinance and the definitions of the zones, he's correct on that. But that really wasn't a full answer, and I'm disappointed that's where he stopped, and he wouldn't go any further. We did a request, a freedom of a public records request. Staff complied, produced on everything supposedly they had and could find with regard to this property, uses, history, objections, whatever. What was not in that was the 1991 litigation. Now, why it wasn't in there? Apparently, planning department didn't maintain a record on that, even though it actually included the planning department in that. I got copies of those documents that are in the packet as part of that litigation from Mr. Schilling. Because David did the right thing. He knew we had a public records request out for it. Those should have been part of the response. They were not made available. They came in, but we're coming up on the hearing of the BZA on the use determination, and David did the right thing. He got those to me because they should have been produced as part of the public records request. And those are important because in 1991, contrary to Ms. Owens to what you understood that to be, it was litigation. Your zoning inspector at the time, that letter is in the packet, did a notice of violation letter because of complaints about parking. The complaints about the parking were not about truck parking noise. That's not even mentioned. The complaint was what it came down to, and you can see this in the litigation that followed when Mr. Schilling had to file an ordinance violation lawsuit, and they ultimately settled it. That settlement agreement and what needed to be done is in the packet, and the case was dismissed. What it came down to was because of the truck parking you're doing, there was an issue about paving and what could be left in stone. Apparently there must have been a dust issue because part of it was a dust retardant, an oil spray, some landscaping, some buffering along the edge. Nothing about you can't park trucks here overnight. And we know that was going on. Everybody knew it was going on. It's been going on since 1988. This is 1981. So it's only been a couple, 3 years. But the complaint that the zoning inspector responded to was the heavy truck parking. Daytime truck parking is almost non-existent. Nobody drives there and says, I'm going to park here for the day and go do something else. They fuel up, buy food, move on. The truck parking was the overnight parking. In the litigation that came to the planning commission, the settlement agreement that David worked out about the paving and the oil retardant and those things came to the planning commission for approval because of this enforcement action. It ultimately went to the board of commissioners for approval. Tim Tilton signed off on it as president. President of the Planning Commission at the time signed off on it. It's interesting, when I got the records that David produced, that led me to tracing the minutes for the Plan Commission when they would have approved that settlement agreement. They approved the litigation being settled. What I found is on your Plan Commission agenda as the truck stop. So 1991, this was a truck stop. And Larry Wilson has said repeatedly, it's the truck stop because it allows trucks parking. That tells me since 1991, the Plan Commission, the county commissioners, the county attorney, and the zoning inspector all knew there's overnight truck parking going on there, and it's continued. When that got settled without David filing a lawsuit that alleges the truck parking was a zoning violation, as far as I'm concerned, and the Plan Commission approving everything and the Board of Commission approving everything, that blessed truck parking as permitted use. That was an interpretation of the use and the ordinance at the time, because they did not cite that as violation. They only cited the dust and the reference and the paving amount and required remediation on that. Never touched the truck parking that was ongoing. That was a source of that. As far as I'm concerned, this is part of the litigation that's going on, that I believe the court will find that since 1991, this truck parking has been a known permitted use on this property. Blessed by the Plan Commission, blessed by the commissioners, and blessed by the county attorney. I don't know how else to interpret that litigation, what they did and what they didn't do, which was say one word about the truck parking has to stop. So when Pilo comes along in 2005 and buys this business, the truck parking was a known fact, was a known condition that all the governmental bodies involved in land use issues had already apparently said that's okay, and he buys that understanding. So what is changing? Nothing except to formalize and formally bless the truck parking overnight. Limited, the trucking industry is changing rapidly. My interviews with the truck drivers, I don't idle engines, I have a power pack. It burns 1/10 to 1/4 of a gallon of diesel fuel to run the power pack, to run either my AC or my heat if I need it. You can't hear it from very far away. Pilo and I were there. This is why I wish somebody would come out and find out yourself, because you got roster saying noise and fumes. There are no fumes. The DEF, the EEF that's required to be added to all diesel fuel takes care of that. They burn the exhaust, they use the DEF, fumes is not in it. This is not the old diesel fuel that you used to know, that you grew up with. Trying to watch my time, I'll wrap it up about 1 minute if I may. The noise, was there an engine idling? The one night I was there was one truck had an engine idling. Walked down to the end of the park down towards Victor, near to Victor Pike, I couldn't hear it. But short than that, those power packs we were operating are you can hear those too if you're within a reasonable distance of the truck. I walked down to halfway down in the parking lot, couldn't hear them again. Fumes are non-issue. That I ask a driver, what about electric plug-in? Don't do that. I can't do it. My truck's not equipped for that. And to my knowledge, nobody is anymore, because states don't require that. Most states don't. If you do, but most don't. So no, they're not building trucks now, truck cabs that are equipped to do that plug-in. We're equipped with power packs. Are there some older trucks on the road that will continue idle engines for lack of something else? Probably. As our pilot's experience is checking from time to time, is it's rare to find one, and rarely more than that, sometimes not idling. So it's not a problem. There's a need for it. The business model has become more important. This first night we talked about this, I downplayed the issue of the impact on the business for doing this, and I was wrong. I mean, when you, and maybe it's post-pandemic, the world is changing, economies are changing, everything counts and everything's important. And the business associated with fueling up purchases are important to store, to its survival. But more important is the reasonable, safe place to park, which is merely a continuation of what's been going on for 30 years, is appropriate, but ask you to support the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Carmen. Thank you. I'd like to turn now to the rest of the people who are here in the room. Are you here to speak in favor of this petition? Or another petition? In favor, if you would one by one come and sign in, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. If you would sign in, state your name, and then you will have 3 minutes to speak, sir. Just let us know your name.
William Shad.
Thank you, Mr. Shag.
I had some friends that built this truck stop 45, 50 years ago, and I was just a kid, and I used to hang around their garage. And as they got it built and it was getting established and everything, and I thought it was just very interesting. It was good to me as a kid. They had a filling station on 11th Street. I always hung out at, and they kind of disappeared, they go to the truck stop and this is all, but I've watched it over the years grow because I've lived in Monroe County for 52 years. And there's always been trucks there of a night, somebody sleeping. They've always been there. They may not been able to park just right, or it wasn't appropriate, maybe just around the truck stop or anywhere they could to get some sleep, but it's always been there. I don't see no harm in it. And you want to see bad truck stops, go to Indianapolis. That'll scare you. This is clean. Pilo takes care of it. He mows, he landscapes, he's willing to do more. Pretty reasonable. I think an asset to Monroe County. We don't have any truck stops at that one. So yeah, I think it's worth having the overnight parking. I really do. Gotta have some sleep. I wouldn't want to pass somebody that ain't slept. Make bad wrecks and trucks do. That's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Is there someone else here who is here to speak in favor of this petition? If not, we're going to turn to people on Zoom. Are there members of the public who are here on Zoom who would like to speak in favor of this petition? If so, please raise your virtual hand. And then tech services will identify you and allow you to talk. So Natalie Blaze. If you would please state your name, and then you'll have 3 minutes to talk to us about why you support this petition.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Natalie Blaze, and my family and I are prior neighbors to Sunmar beginning in 2001. I would like to begin my statement by asking questions. I would like to know when the complainants against the overnight parking purchased their property. Was it after the gas station was in existence or before? If after, I make the claim that they knew what they were purchasing and where and what the ramifications would be for doing so. If it was before, I would like to hear specific data on what changes have occurred on the property, on their specific property since the arrival of the station and its overnight parking. Regardless, as pointed out by the slides provided earlier, you know that you have a handful against the overnight parking and an overwhelmingly majority of folks supporting it, which is in my opinion, the ultimate issue at hand. Those against the overnight parking, you've stated their complaints. However, have they done any testing to prove any sound violations? Have they tested to prove the air quality condition? Just because they say it is so, why does that make it true? Because their nose knows? Why doesn't my nose know? I've lived there for 20 years and never once had a sound issue or an air quality complaint to offer. If I had, I would have made it known. Because my nose disagrees, does my opinion on that not matter? As someone who is in favor of the continuation of overnight parking for the safety of the drivers and the support of the business owners, I don't feel the council is in a position to make a determination based solely on the opinion of a few and not any clear data. Unless those complaining offer clear data provided by an impartial company, how can the council vote to change something that has been in place for years and in my opinion is grandfathered in because of its years of service that is provided to the community? Opinions are opinions, not facts. I ask that you demand data to back up the few offered complaints before you take your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blaze. And just for the record, when people are speaking, they don't really ask questions of us or of staff at this time, but we appreciate the intention of your questions. So thank you, Ms. Blaze. And so the next person who will be speaking is, I think, Ryan and Vanessa Clow. So if you would please unmute them, and I don't know if one person will speak or two people will speak.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So this is Vanessa Clow. I'm commenting on behalf of me and my husband. Thank you for opening the floor for public commentary. I'm grateful for the commission to seek community input. There are a couple of points I would like you to take into consideration as you consider your vote. First is safety. I recognize there are some community members who are concerned about the safety should this measure be continued. In the 20 years, so even before Rosie and Pilo purchased the Sunmart gas station, I have worked and lived in Monroe County, and overnight parking has always occurred at this facility while I've been a resident here. I have never once felt unsafe regardless of the time of day. And believe me, I've had to make midnight runs for cough medicine for my girls or something else. And I've never not felt safe. I've also never been concerned about truck idling and fumes. As Mr. Carmen pointed out, I have driven there late at night, early in the morning, and never once saw an issue. The owners have taken important steps over the years by adding new lights and security cameras to ensure all patrons are safe. The facility is also a hub for both local and state police, which I hope the commission and community will take into account. Additionally, since the commission last acted on this request, I've seen a rise in overnight parking in the off and on ramps on 3rd Street, 2nd Street, and Highway 37 exits, regardless of the free parking at some Bloomington businesses. As we know, this is a dangerous practice, especially for young drivers and new folks to the area. With the addition of 40,000 residents this week, I do worry about the community implications this will have moving forward. The other point I wanted to make is reputation. How will this decision influence Monroe County's reputation amongst the transport community, in addition to other industries that utilize Sunmart's overnight parking? As the commission has already discussed, there are no other truck stops in Monroe County. Has any of the commissioners met with these groups and spoken with them about how this will influence their view of the county, willingness to deliver goods to the community, and their buying habits, i.e. tax revenue for the community? Sunmart deeply benefits from overnight parking as these drivers purchase gas and goods at the stations, which in turn benefits all of us. Finally, we should, as we know, these small business owners provide incredibly important services to Bloomington, Ellisville, Smithville, and other local communities in Monroe County. And if they don't feel supported, it could influence their willingness to make our community a priority moving forward. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I do want to mention, just as a quick side note, Mr. Carmen did not address the apartment. I did want to mention, as a patron of Sunmart, Rosie and Pilo are always there, always, regardless of time of day. And so just something for the commission to take into consideration is that it's been very difficult for them to find staff. And so having a place where they can take a nap, I know would be deeply appreciated. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Clow. And is Mr. Clow going to speak as well?
No, he is not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I see Brian has his hand raised. And you have 3 minutes, Mr. Brian.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, when I hear all this, I think about
Sir, we can barely hear you. Mr. Brian? You're kind of crunchy. We can't really hear.
So, some of my trucks were the ones parked behind Rosie and Pilo's. We do the local utility here for the local company. But I don't want my trucks trying to weave in and out of these other gas stations where, you know, those gas stations ain't big enough for our trucks. It's the thing. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Are you finished?
Okay, how about now? Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Oh, yeah.
Are you finished with your statement, or did you want to try again?
Okay, what I was saying is, no, the gas station that rode up without having to run into town here. Oh, damn.
We can hear you.
third time. My trucks occupy the back parking lot behind Rosie's. We park our trucks there in the evening and come there in the morning. It's a safety issue. My trucks can get in and get fuel without having to run into the town of Bloomington, try to find diesel fuel somewhere. But also at the same time, they buy their breakfast and their lunch from Rosie and Pilo. I just want to say, I think it's a safe location. We've got cameras back here as well as what Rosie and Pilo. I know they got security cameras as well with the lighting. So that's all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bryan. Thank you for speaking to us. I'm sorry for the technical distortions, but I think we understood your point. I also see that there is someone calling in by telephone. If you're going to speak in favor of this petition, please press *9 so that we can unmute you. Do you see anyone? Okay, so we will now turn to the people who would like to speak in opposition to this petition. Is there anyone in the room here at the courthouse who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? So I don't think you would like to speak. Okay. Is there anyone online on Zoom who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Mr. Jeff Morris, if you would, when they allow you to unmute yourself, would you please state your name and then you have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Jeff Morris. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I live across the street from the gas station, and one of the things I want to speak to right away is the comments about the view shed. The view shed drastically changed 2 years ago when a row of mature spruce trees along Victor Pike were cut down. And my understanding is those were a requirement of the 91 court case that came up earlier. One of the concerns I spoke about in a previous meeting was the slow growth that has taken place on the petitioner's property over time. Some examples include piles of dirt that have been dumped here and there to expand parking, as Ann showed in a slide earlier. The tree removal I just mentioned, some extra trucks parking adjacent to houses here and there. Small changes here and there may not make much of a difference at the time, but added up over time, it becomes a much bigger problem. The current zoning of the property is pre-existing business. Increased intensity is not allowed. On page 26 of tonight's packet, the petitioner admits that, quote, the truck parking during the time Sunmart Investments owned the property had been broadened to include equipment parking, end quote. That alone is an increased intensity and a perfect self-admission illustrating what has been occurring. My second concern is the lack of ability to enforce the no idling policy, as Ms. Owens mentioned earlier. I know in the packet tonight it states that overnight idling will be prohibited. That sounds great on paper. However, that clause means nothing to neighbors at 3 a.m. when we're listening to the rumble of an engine idling or a refrigeration unit on a truck cycling on and off all night long. In tonight's packet, on page 29, it states that, quote, the petitioner has patrolled the truck parking from time to time. It is rare to find an engine idling, end quote. I disagree with that. The parking lot is not as full as it used to be, and I'm appreciative of that. Yet at least once a week, I'm awakened to the sound of a truck idling in the middle of the night alongside the cones meant to prevent parking. If preventing overnight parking was enforceable, then it should have stopped a year ago when the no overnight parking sign was first installed. No overnight parking seems straightforward. If parking is allowed, but not idling is not, enforcement will be even more challenging. My other concerns come not as a neighbor, but as a Monroe County resident and the precedent this would set if approved tonight. There was a court case against the gas station in the early 90s, as was mentioned earlier. It doesn't specifically mention overnight parking. However, it does stipulate other requirements the owners at the time and any future owners are expected to follow. Some examples are evergreens planted to provide screening for the neighbors year-round. Those were cut down in 2020, as I mentioned a minute ago. The entire parking lot should be paved to minimize dust, and trash should be picked up on a regular basis. None of those are in full compliance with the 1990s court case. This case dates back several owners. However, the county has not been following up on ensuring compliance. If this PUD is approved tonight, it sets the precedent to not worry about zoning. Just wait for the county to call out any issues and then submit a plan to accommodate what you've already been doing. This is a negative reflection on the county and makes me question why we even have zoning in the first place. Lastly, an I-69 corridor study was completed several years ago before I-69 connected to State Road 37. That study is included in tonight's packet, and one paragraph jumps out. It reads, quote, "Throughout the State Road 37 I-69 corridor, the county definitively will not permit truck stops and fueling stations to be developed. As an intersection of State Road 37 and I-69, this location might be considered for such a facility. Because of the character and intensity of existing residential and business development, the county has reviewed this issue and specifically recommends that truck stops and fueling facilities not be developed at this location," end quote. As I've mentioned in previous meetings, I support the permitted uses of the gas station. However, I do not support overnight parking and do not condone the idea that unpermitted expansion and then coming back later and saying it's been this way for years should be allowed. In reading through the letters of support tonight, it's clear that most of the supporters don't know the full story. The blame for zoning violations has been
Thank
placed.
you, Mr. Morris. I'm sorry. Thank you. I've allowed you to go over by about a minute, so thank you.
Thank you.
I see that Patty and Dave Bush are here, and if tech services would allow them to unmute, if you would have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Patty Bush and I'm speaking for Dave and myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Just a few short sentences here. The diesel exhaust from idling trucks is noxious. I work outside a minimum of 5 hours each day. That was my choice, our choice, when we bought this place over 20 years ago. It is how we care for our animals and how we enjoy our property. I can smell the diesel. There's no doubt about that. I don't smell it every day, but depending upon the weather, if it's still on a really hot day, I can smell it. If it's really, really cold and it's still, I can smell it. And I don't want to breathe that. That's not why we bought 16 acres. Idling of motor vehicles contributes to global warming and is linked to asthma, decreased lung function, cardiac disease, cancer, and other serious health problems. The petitioners propose no idling signage at their site. This will be exceedingly difficult to enforce for the following reasons: limited on-site staff to enforce this policy, extreme hot and cold weather conditions requiring idling to heat or cool the cab. Idling keeps engines warm, prevents diesel fuel from thickening as temps get cold. Idling ensures the alternator keeps the battery charged, and idling overnight costs nothing to non-owner operators. I also want to add that several times it's been mentioned that semi-tractor trailers have nowhere else to park except along the side of the road. This is not true. Walmart has been accepting semi-tractor trailers parking there for a very long time, years, as has Sam's Club with permission. I just want to reiterate that engine idling has impacts that negatively affect air quality. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Patty. Is your husband also wishing to speak?
I am, and I would like to say a brief statement. We moved to this property in 1999, and it has always been the gas station up on the corner has always been one that I have frequented. And I have noticed an increase in business there over the years, as well as truck parking, specifically overnight parking of trucks and I guess it would be contractor equipment. That is something that has changed over time. I think it's unfair to the neighborhood, and I certainly think it's unfair to Rosie and Pilo, who, by the way, I think have done a great job of maintaining that restaurant, convenience store, and filling station. I think they're a credit to the community. I think it puts them in a real bad position if this is approved, that they can trucks can officially park overnight, but they cannot idle their trucks because as has been stated before by several people, enforcement of that is going to be not challenging. It's going to be unenforceable. So it puts them in a bad position. They have to be the truck police, and I don't think that's fair to them or to those of us who do have to breathe the exhaust that we hear, that we smell upon occasion, due to the weather being what it is. So that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. I'm going to ask if anyone is calling in by telephone who would like to speak in opposition to this petition. If so, press *9, or if you're attending by Zoom, please raise your virtual hand. I know there's a comment in chat, but I don't know what that pertains to. Okay, so Mr. Carmen, you have a 5-minute rebuttal. Thank you.
Again, my name is Mike Carmer. I want to read a couple of letters. There several letters kept coming in, and he's capturing them. I got them all posted to the portal, but even one was late this afternoon just before it over this way. But this one came in yesterday. I think it was the group that Ann read. This is for Brian Hendrickson. I'll just read his statement. My name is Brian Hendrickson. I'm supervisor for Townsend. Townsend is a contracting company, does, well, he goes on to say, and we occupy the back lot behind the station. We have for the last 14 years, we do the local vegetation for Duke in the area. So it's a contract crew. Duke doesn't have their own employees that do the maintenance of the easements to clean out brush and trees, do all that. They contract out. Towns is one of those. Anyway, he goes on. This is the central location for my employees. I have them coming from Bedford, Greene County, and Owen and Morgan County. The parking is convenient and very secure with cameras, as well as we have cameras. The men buy their breakfast and lunch, as well as getting fuel for the trucks. There's no other station in Bloomington area that can provide the space along with fueling trucks. There are several of the letters that Ann showed earlier. Our neighbors, this one, Emma Kluke talks about being across the street from the station, and I disagree that it causes any annoyance, harm, or inconvenience. So there are people on side, but to me, the issue is support, and this is not an applause meter contest of count the number of noses and how many for, how many against. That's not the point. The point is facts, the use. It is a use that's needed. The county did something similar many years ago when we started having the tourist cabins. There are not a bunch of those out in the county. There's a complaint with regard to one that led to an enforcement action, but what it really led to was the planning staff crafting what is now your tourist cabin conditional use part of the ordinance, because what was recognized, there was a need. There was no use that permitted that. So they defined a use, set the standards, and then did it. And that's what we tried to do with the truck stop small. We set maximum size 5 acres. It can't develop into the travel plaza big truck stop is that because limited 5 acres. We tried to impose some other things that would say this is a middle of the road gap between fuel station only with a convenience mart and the truck stop travel plaza that everybody thinks of. Even the report that's read earlier about the paragraph that stood out when it talked about truck stop, it's talking about the truck stop that is envisioned by your definition ordinance, not this operation. So again, I was submitted, and even Mr. Hendrickson, his statement about the equipment parking been going on for 14 years. It's not a recent expansion. And then the last comment, I think, last couple, make sure that we understand, we talk about what's the difference between equipment parking and truck parking. Equipment parking has nobody staying in the equipment overnight. It's just a place to locate the equipment when they're here for a period of time, 60 days, 90 days, whatever that contract is, to do the easement clearing for Duke. Or years ago, many years ago, is Miller Pipeline, where they had a bunch of infrastructure contracts the city to put in water lines and sewer lines. Then they were parking equipment out there. That was long before this owner. And so it is something of a seasonal use, but there's no engine idling with that. The designated areas for this parking, that equipment parking, to be closest to Vernal Pike, because that moves the truck parking further away from Vernal Pike and the neighbors that way. So it's intentional in terms of how we define areas for that reason, to put the non-driver occupied, no risk of overnight engine idling at the area closest to Victor Pike and any neighbors. So there's lots more to be said. I'll be at some point just getting repetitive, so I won't bore you with that. Would submit that that the fortuity of this having gone on so long is that it gives you history. It gives you case history. You've got lots of people saying this is not a problem, noise, odors. You've got a few that say it is. I mean, but the industry is changing. The issue of truck idling is waning. It's not gone yet, but it's certainly on its way out, and it will be. And I would say relatively soon. The older trucks will be gone, the power packs are in place, and they're not an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carmen. So bring it back to members of the Plan Commission, and I'll start with my right, Mr. Enright Randolph.
Yes, so just I want to kind of sort through a few different comments that have been made. So when you look, the formal Walmart, Sam's Club, is in the city. Not the current location, the former location, Sam's Club area. So I'm not exactly sure what the city's stance on permitting overnight, but I would be curious if they find themselves in the same situation we are currently, where they're kind of permitting something for safety purposes, but they don't really have an ordinance that permits it. My question, though, is Walmart has been stated that is in the county zone. It's a PUD. And are they permitted to have overnight parking, or would they have to go through that process too to permit that use, or even go through a rezone process to, potentially create a travel plaza truck stop? But, they might not be that close to an interstate, so, or have that much frontage, so that property might not be permitted in the first place. I know that's kind of a long question. I'll be more focused. Wouldn't they find themselves out of compliance if they permitted overnight parking for trucks as well?
So the zoning of the Walmart is GB.
Oh, sorry.
The zoning of the Walmart is general business, not PUD.
I have my color, but my point, would they be finding themselves out of compliance if they permitted overnight truck parking?
If you have, so the use determination that Mike Carmen was bringing up was with truck stop travel plaza as a primary use. So it would have to be a separate primary use to allow overnight truck parking as a permitted use under that same use determination.
So we just find ourselves in the same situation. I just want to sort through some of these comments that have been made. Again, I don't know about the Sam's Club. I think maybe we should see what the city has to say on that one, but that could be a fun conversation. Now, there's been a lot of indication of smelling diesel and things, but from my observations, a lot of that was during the day. So none of this would prevent any trucks from gassing up, coming, staying during the day, right? This is all due to the overnight request, right? So the comments that we heard of smelling diesel during the day, during operational hours of the convenience store and, other operations going on, they're going to still smell that diesel, right? Unless everyone just decides to go elsewhere. So I wanted to kind of sort through that. It's a little, not a question there. In the idling, I'm not going to say let's leave it to our state legislator to address this. They haven't, but a lot of states have addressed that through state code. And I don't know. I'm either way on that one. But what I want to address is there are numerous ordinances that we don't have adequate staff to go and police and enforce. So this discussion of, oh, we should just throw that out the window because we can't go out there and enforce and inspect that, it is not just, because there's a lot of different enforcement issues that we have trouble keeping up on. So I wanted to kind of sift through that one too. But what I feel is that we made it real difficult to permit any overnight truck stops in Monroe County, and we're well past the time to address this. And we need to consider, do we really want to force a 10-acre undeveloped property to be the only place that's going to be able to permit this? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. Mr. McKim.
Yes, are we allowed to address questions to the petitioner's representative at this point? Is that our usual process?
I'm going to turn to Mr. Schilling and Ms. Nestor Jelen. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Carmen. I just had a couple of questions here. So first of all, one of the letters of remonstrance stated petitioner proposes paved or gravel parking over the existing septic drainage field. A septic drainage field should not be used for parking. And I guess I'd like to hear your reaction to
It's
that.
not correct. There's there's a lift station down close to the right of way, but nobody can tell me who controls that. Even city, I couldn't get an answer out of the city utilities. They have a septic permit and the field is in the grass area west of the parking area.
Okay, so nobody's
west or
proposing
northwest.
paving or turning that into a parking lot or anything like that. Thank you. And then also, I'm curious as to your reaction to or comments on the three recommendations that staff made if we were to
Do you have, can you have
So-
a straight?
yes, well, the one you've sort of already addressed, but the first one's prohibiting overnight truck parking from idling.
Our plan would be to, with signage, indicate truck engine idling is not permitted. Try to police that a little bit, but I agree with even the remonstrators say policing that is not going to be easy. And it's not, so other than to actively discourage it, but both by signage and by word when the drivers come in to get anything, or we go out and patrol the lot and find a truck idling to tell them they've got to stop, shut off, or they need to leave. But that's going to happen. My point is it's going to happen very rarely, but we will try to actively discourage it, but we're not going to be able to.
Okay. And then the second is petitioner to propose a landscaping plan that includes screening to protect the view shed of the adjacent historic property.
I don't know how we do that. No, there is some landscaping out there, but screening to protect the view shed. First of all, I disagree that even should be a consideration, quite honestly. I mean, this has been there. We're talking about an adjacent property. I don't know where and when the view shed from other property became a controlling factor on what we're doing. I mean, or other properties too, just out of BS. But with regard to that, look at the elevation change. I mean, the grade change to what, 75 feet from where the farm is to the parking lot where this building is. I don't know how in our lifetime, we're going to get trees and shrubs tall enough that's going to screen that view. Can it be improved with some additional trees? Yes, but if what the issue is, some green trees, shrubs to do some visual barrier, but as a screen it's just not going to happen. The topography won't allow it.
Thanks. And then the third is entirety of parking lot to be paved per chapter 806 standards and parking plan submission to be reviewed by the county highway engineer.
Yeah. So the plan as submitted called for additional paving to phase it in. The area that we in our details would not pave would be limited to the actual long-term truck parking. The paving standards for the prolonged sitting still truck and the weight on it is quite a bit different than the drive. And that's the problem. I mean, you've seen this, Young Trucking was in a few years ago for a waiver on paving because of where their heavy trucks were on the part of the Rob's Industrial Park that they bought just up across the road and up the street from this. They got a waiver of paving on part of it because of what the heavier trucks do on paving. And that's just an issue of that. So some additional paving yet, it actually proposed a phase in is an expense, and an overnight expense is a problem, but the some area be left in stone. Yes.
Okay, so your intended paving though is already in the outline plan. Okay, thanks. I guess my final comment is just that I think Tron's point was particularly well taken, that how is having a giant 10-acre plot truck plaza, which is envisioned by our ordinance, more in the interest of the community than having a truck stop small that's already here and operating. And I'm pretty convinced by the arguments that provided throughout the discussion of this petition that the status quo is really working pretty well. And this petition is just legitimating the status quo that's been going on for 30 years for a use that is clearly needed and desired by the community. I mean, the biggest change I see is the possible accessory apartment for an owner employee. And while Mr. Carmen indicated a willing to jettison that particular use, I think it's kind of cool. I like the idea of having an owner's apartment. I think it's a great idea. So, I intend to support the petition as is.
Thank you, Mr. McKim. Are there comments to my left? Mr. Pittsford?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I wanted to note, Commissioner Thomas is in danger of giving me a bad name and saying something about altruistic motives and what I was saying earlier. And I should never be accused of making decisions based on altruism. But anyway, my concern here is for the viability and profitability of a business that is generating tax revenue for the county. I mean, they're paying their county tax. The state road taxes derived from the sale of diesel fuel and gasoline. So we need these places in order to generate that money. I wonder when the neighbors speak of the diesel fume concern, if some of that's not originating from State Road 37. And in terms of noise, possibly the same thing, maybe not the idling, but I know that my first apartment in Vincennes was fairly close to Interstate 41, and there was a Kroger and a Kmart building between us and stuff, and I could still hear heavy trucks through the night. It just is endemic to that kind of situation. So anyway, I just wanted to say that, I wanted to point out those are possibilities. I appreciate Mr. McKim's comments. He covered some of the things that I had been thinking of, and even some that I thought were good remarks. So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. Mr. Garitas, do you have any comments?
Again, Tron hit a couple right on the head. The one about, is it desirable to have trucks slide into a big box or a shopping center or something where there's nothing controlled? Our goal is to kind of regulate those things and keep activities the way we want them as far as safety and predictable for the public, and places like this do that for people coming into the community that may or may not be familiar with it. These places also assign needs to what that individual that's in this case driving the trucks need in the morning or need in the evening or need at some time of the day. So when they're ready to go, they don't have to go through the community looking for something to eat, coffee, socks, blue jeans, whatever they need to keep doing their business. So I think that we want these areas in our ordinance, and I think we want these uses because it allows that predictability of what somebody can find when they go there to utilize them. It's going to be utilized. I read the daytime trucking versus the nighttime or overnight parking, and I don't know that other than cutting the time period, I don't know that trucks emit less fumes, or their air conditioning systems or cooling systems probably operate less in the night than they do in the day. So it seems kind of odd that it would be allowed at some parts of the day and not others. We've got rules in the ordinances for light, sound, air quality, the paving, the things that are protected already. So I don't know what the differences are when we allow it daytime and we don't allow it at nighttime. Obviously people are trying to sleep, but again, we've got those conditions contained in the ordinance. It's right next to State Route 37. It's right next to I-69. You've got a stoplight there. There's probably Jake brakes on the trucks going on. I don't see a difference from what is there now and what we would have later and what's in the surrounding area. I'm glad you asked about the conditions because I was going to go through those, but you asked the right questions. So thanks for that, Jeff. And I liked Tron's point again about having these cottage truck stops or these small truck stops where you don't have 10 acres of new construction that all of a sudden becomes a Love's truck stop. I think that these are compartmentalized, and I think that for the public, especially in this predictable use where it's at, I think that it's very desirable. And in our society now with Amazon and all the trucks that are on the road delivering things back and forth, this need's only going to increase. And I think that the Walmart parking lots may get smaller. Who knows? Anyway, those are my points. I think it's historically had this use on it. I've said this at other meetings. I've seen it. I've lived in the community for long enough to say that I've been through there. It's known as the Victor Pike Truck Stop or the truck stop. And you always see trucks there. You see them at any time of the day or night. And I think it's a predictable use for the whole of the community. So.
Thank you, Mr. Garatas. Commissioner Thomas or Ms. Owens? Ms. Owens, do you have any comments? I see.
No, I have comments, but I've heard everything I need to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, then we bring it back. I have one or two comments actually, and just to ponder. What a truck stop was in 1991 is not what a truck stop is today. You know, there's been like Mr. Carmen has mentioned, you know, the whole trucking industry has been under evolution and revolution. And especially, I would say, with regard to intensity of use, the push on the truck drivers to make their schedules and to deliver things and freight across our nation has really been intensified. And so when we have a truck stop zoned as a truck stop, the intensification of that use without any qualification, like Mr. Carmen had suggested, like truck stop small, matters, you know, because we don't necessarily want it to be one of these huge plazas. But I don't see anything here that enables the mitigation of the growth of the size and the intensity, because what existed in 1991 is vastly different from what exists today in terms of truck driving intensity, as well as the pressure put on the truck drivers to get from point A to point B within a certain amount of time. And in this particular area, another major change since 1991 or when the truck stop originally began is this interstate that has gone through our community. And that also leads to an intensification of use that we may not have foreseen in the beginning. So I think that, of course, there was you know, a failure for the interstate system to not make a system of truck stops across the newly paved ground, but I don't think that that's something that we can solve here by a local plan commission. I think it needs to be a coordinated activity. And so I'm still very concerned about this, because it seems as though it's just rolling, you know, the purpose of planning is to shape a community, to shape it into what you want it to be and to prevent it from becoming your worst fears. And I don't really see anything in this other than just saying, let's just let the business owner do what he wants. And the community has really no say in it. That's kind of the way I see it. That we have a responsibility to shape what should come at this, how this particular spot should evolve, regardless of who the current owners are. And I don't see that in this particular petition, unless any of my colleagues would correct me.
I've got a brief comment maybe. So part of what we're talking about is whether or not a truck stop use with this overnight parking would be permitted or predictable in a zone classification. But this is a PUD.
Right.
And the purpose of a PUD is to develop a site that has unique characteristics for what its intention is.
Mhm.
And then extract some sort of open area and other conditions that are within the ordinance. And to me, this meets that. because it is a property that is being used for what the anticipated intent is. The apartment, I think that's a pretty cool and good idea. There's another one in town that does the same thing and the owners live there, right? But that's what, this being a PUD takes the unique characteristics and qualities of this property that aren't really anywhere else and says, this is what we want to do with it. And these are the conditions that we're going to apply to it. That's the whole purpose of the PUD, which
Yes.
I'm not a big fan of getting rid of the PUD portion of the ordinance, other than it makes staff have to patrol and look at several different types of developments, but that's the unique characteristics that cause that, which is a pretty good concept when you get right down to it, in my opinion. Again, I think when people go through town and they go through the community and they see that, that's what they think that they're gonna find is exactly what the petitioner wants to do. It's going to be controlled because they're coming through the planning process. They're coming through the site design process. They're going to follow a development plan. They're going to make it within as close to the ordinance as what we can get it for something that is unique. So those are my comments to maybe the question that you asked, Margaret.
Yes, Mr. McKim.
Thank you. And I'd also like to address your comments, Madam Chair. It seems to me that, I mean, I think that's a legitimate concern, the unchecked growth and increase in intensification. But I think the outline plan that's being proposed here does exactly that. I mean, the proposed uses are all very tightly constrained. I mean, the size of the restaurant is limited. The number of parking spaces for each of the different types of parking are limited. The uses are specified quite specifically, I think, in a way that I think is much more, like I've said before, advantageous to the community than what actually would be permitted by the truck stop use that's already in the code. It just seems to me like what's being proposed here in writing in the petition really is self-limiting in terms of the increase in intensity.
Thank you, Mr. McKim. So we'll come back to my colleagues. Is there any further comment or motion?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsburgh.
Before I do,
Oh, no red.
okay, before I do, just to be clear, this is a planned unit outline, right? Okay, so once the outline is approved, then there'll be oversight and all that stuff. So whatever is agreed to, it's going to be monitored. They'll submit complete design plans. Okay, because right now it's outlined, but there will be a design that follows, correct?
If approved by the county commissioners, they will be required to submit a development plan.
Okay, which would then be a PUD event, whole nother petition. Kind of.
Yes, it would be
Right.
reviewed administratively by staff like any other commercial site plan.
Okay, exactly. And I'm sure we'll be updated in administrative meetings about that process, if there's any problems, right?
It would only be administrative review by planning staff unless the plan commission or county commissioners added that as a requirement of the planned unit outline.
But I just was kind of pointing out that there was a problem. There is a form that be brought up in as an administrative issue for the commission. Correct. I don't know if Jackie, are you following me?
Yeah,
What I'm saying is if we
I
agree to
understand.
the outline
Yeah,
and they bring in a plan or a design that's not consistent
right,
with that, and there's pushback, you'll bring it to us.
right. It would almost have to be an outline plan amendment if they're not able to meet the standards that they set forth in the outline plan that if received approval, then they would have to meet that standard or come to you with an outline plan amendment.
Okay, all right. We haven't done one of these for a long time, so I wanted to kind of be clear that, we don't approve this and they walk off and do whatever they want, and stretch the meaning of what they agreed to. So anyway, with that being said, in case number PUO-21-1, a request by P&G Associates LLC for planned unit outline with the waiver of final hearing. This is a property located at 5100 South Victor Pike consisting of 4.9 plus or minus acres, zone pre-existing business in Perry Township. It is my motion that the Plan Commission forward this to the county commissioners with a positive recommendation based on the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway Department and MS4 coordinators, with also including the following conditions. Number one, that petitioner post a sign in the area where overnight parking will occur that encourages trucks to refrain from idling as a courtesy to surrounding residents. Not a full requirement not to, but a requirement that they ask that it not be done unless necessary. Condition number two, that the petitioner dedicate and convey open space per chapter 811, meeting those standards that are in exhibit 1 of tonight's packet. Condition number 3, the entirety of the parking lot will be paved per chapter 806 standards and parking plan submission to be reviewed by county highway engineer over a period of 5 years in accordance with a phased plan and design agreed to and monitored by staff. And number 4, petitioner update the outline plan to ensure standards are consistent among all submissions and include all required design standards, including setbacks for proposed structures, parking, and landscaping. And number 5, that if, according to the remonstrator comment tonight, if trees had been removed in 2020 that had been previously required, that those trees be replaced from where they were removed. That is my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to send a favorable recommendation to the county commissioners based on the findings and subject to several conditions, which I will read again. To make sure that I have them down right. So 1, that the petitioner post signs where overnight parking may occur and to encourage no idling of trucks as a courtesy to adjacent neighbors. 2 would be to dedicate and convey open space per chapter 811 as shown in exhibit 1. 3 is that the entirety of the parking lot area be paved per chapter 806 standards and parking plan be submitted and reviewed by the highway county engineer within 5 years of the approved outline plan. Is that okay to word it that way? You had said a phased plan.
Yeah, go ahead. If you would, please include the word phased.
Okay, so
In
over
that way,
5
if
years
it's-
and a
If
phased
it's
plan.
cost prohibitive to do it immediately,
Okay,
you know, all at one time, then they could make an agreement for a plan that includes phasing that is agreeable.
and then that the petitioner update the outline plan. Did you include that one as well?
Yes,
Okay, that the petitioner update the outline plan to ensure standards are consistent amongst all submissions and include all required design standards, including setbacks for proposed structures, parking, and landscaping. And lastly, that the trees removed in 2020 be replaced with the development plan submission.
yes. And
that's
would you
moved and
confirm that
seconded.
those trees were removed in 2020?
Yes, we know
Okay.
which one you're talking about. We
All right.
have aerial photography, so I'll call the roll.
Thank you.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
D Owens,
No,
Julie Thomas,
No.
Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
No,
Okay, so the motion fails 4-3, and we can entertain another motion to either deny the petition or send no recommendation, or this gets continued.
I guess with the descending votes on this, was any of the sticking point with the no idling overnight? And if so, if that's can get you over to support this, I'd be willing to support another motion with that additional condition.
Tron, if you
Well,
think
actually-
it'll work, put a motion forward. That's the best way to do it.
I'm really indifferent here, and it's very unfortunate that we're 2 members short currently with our plan commission. So we have actively 8 appointed members currently. It's just a,
7.
oh, just 7, sorry, thank you. I'll attempt a motion. Jerry, did you make some notes? Because I was gonna use all of your,
Yes, I do have some notes.
Can you just reference all the
could I
conditions he already
reference
made,
those?
but
Okay,
strike?
I would like to reference all the conditions, including the sign to encourage people not to idle, but also add the condition that there is no overnight idling. So not replace any, just add the one additional.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to add an additional condition that's enforceable of no overnight truck idling. It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the roll. Dee Owens,
No.
Julie Thomas,
No,
Bernie Garitas, Jerry Pittsford,
Yes,
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
No,
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion fails again, 4-3.
In the matter of PUO 21-1, I move that we forward to the Board of Commissioners without a recommendation. But okay, I was going to include all of the same conditions that Jerry Pittsford added.
I don't know if you.
Or do we not do conditions if we have no
You have no
recommendation?
recommendation.
Okay, well then I just move that we forward it to the Board of Commissioners with no recommendation.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to send PUO 21-1 to the Board of Commissioners with no Plan Commission recommendation. Julie Thomas,
yes,
Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
no,
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes,
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
I don't like it either.
Dee Owens.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion carries 6-1.
I'd like to thank everyone here for my colleagues and the people in the room and the people online and the people, Mr. Carmen. This is a difficult case. I respect everyone's opinion, and I know I feel respected too by my colleagues for our difference, but we're trying to do our best. And so thank you very much for the robust conversation and for coming out tonight to participate in this deliberative process. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're moving on to the next item on the agenda, and that is REZ 22-6, and that concerns a property at 4595 North Maple Grove Road. And I believe that Mr. Myers will be discussing this case with us. And if you would be so kind as to begin, I'd be grateful.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. So this is the Ray Barn Renovation Historic Preservation Overlay Rezone located at 4595 North Maple Grove Road. It's in Bloomington Township, Section 18. All right. So this request is for a parcel totaling 7 acres It's currently zoned Estate Residential 1 or RE1. And the request is to establish the historic preservation overlay on top of the existing zoning district. The most recent Indiana historic sites and structures inventory of the county survey from Monroe County is available through the SHARD database, and it ranks this property, the Ben Owens Farmstead, as outstanding. The Monroe County Interim Report 1989 also ranks the farmstead as outstanding. This rating O means that the property has enough historic or architectural significance that it is already listed or should be considered for individual listing in the National Register for Historic Places. So the intention behind the establishment of the HP overlay on this petition site is in order to provide the petitioner the opportunity to establish an additional dwelling on the property. There are a number of historic structures on the property, including a farmstead house, barn, log cabin, and some length of dry stone walls. There's also a cemetery located on the petition site, but the main target for the renovation and project of the current property owner is the barn structure. They intend to renovate the inside in order to provide a additional dwelling area for them. Their family has stayed has owned the property for quite some time, and they would like another structure to live in while their children move into, and their kids move into the farmhouse. So as I stated, this is for the historic preservation overlay, not just a standard rezone. And what that means is that the underlying zoning district does not go away. The HP overlay provides a flexibility and protection that's designated within the HP district. Essentially, if there are any conflicting conditions within the RE1 zone and the HP overlay district, the most restrictive requirements will apply. So in order to receive a positive recommendation from the Historic Preservation Board of Review, there has to be certain designations and criteria that have to be met for the HP overlay. These items here you see on the screen, 1 through 7, are the criteria examples, and the ones highlighted are the ones that the HP Board of Review talked about and decided that these were the ones that fit best for this petition. These were also confirmed with the current property owner, and they were able to establish or provide more information regarding each of these 3 items here. So I'll read the first one: in association with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of county history. Number 3, the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction. And 5, high artistic values. So it was the understanding of the board, the Historic Preservation Board of Review, that this property met those 3 at least, and that they provided a positive recommendation to this overlay rezone. All right, so here I have the location maps on North Maple Grove Road. Here on the right side of the screen, I have the SHARD database map that indicates the property as outstanding, and also has some other items identified here, such as the cemetery. Here we have the current zoning map, RE1, as I stated before, and the comprehensive plan has it designated as Nakua Suburban Residential. Here we have some aerial pictometry of the petition site, as well as some photographs on the ground. Down closer to the bottom of the screen is the old print shop, which is also a dwelling unit or a guest house that has existed for quite some time. Then here is the barn structure that they intend to renovate into a dwelling space. And then the existing original farmhouse up here. There's a pool and some other minor outbuildings over here. And then the log cabin that's historically significant is over here as well. So here's just some more pictures. This is the print shop or guest house building that I spoke of. Just a small outbuilding here on the right side of the screen. Then we have the barn structure that also has the inside that is shown here, that will be undergoing the renovation to establish a dwelling area. More pictures here. This is the original farmhouse. And then just other photographs around the property as I continue scrolling through these images here. All right. So here we have the petitioner's letter to the Plan Commission stating their intentions for the property, as well as a submitted site plan for the property. If the rezone does go through for the HP overlay, the petitioner will proceed with acquiring the necessary permits to engage in the renovation process. And that will also have to go to the HP Board of Review for a review to make sure that they receive a certificate of appropriateness. And here we have a couple pages worth of a brief history of the Owens farmstead provided by the petitioner. This is also included in the packet that was provided to you. So I'm just going to scroll through these. If we have any questions about any of the information in here, we can come back to it. And then these are some images provided in that same exhibit that was provided by the petitioner. And finally, an exhibit that shows the shard database that indicates the outstanding nature of the property, as well as some other items that are worth noting. All right, this brings me to the recommendation. Staff recommends forwarding a positive recommendation to the county commissioners based on the findings of fact and the petition meeting the following HP overlay criteria. I spoke of these before. Number one, in association with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of county history. 2, the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction. And 3, high artistic values. I will now take any questions.
Do members of the Plan Commission have questions for Mr. Myers? Mr. Pittsford?
Yeah, I have one question. Why did they not identify work of a master? Because that stone fence that exists there can't be duplicated. I don't think there's a person around today that could do that work. So anyway, just my notice.
Mr. Garatos?
Quick curious question. If with the pool that's in the back of the house, if they would designate this to the historic, the HP, would that be permitted just to a building permit through the county? Or would they have to go to the Historic Preservation Board in order to get approval to put the pool in that's now, if they were going to do it? If it wasn't in, they wanted to do that later. Does that make sense? I kind of garbled that up.
Yeah, so once this is designated as historic, every building permit that comes through, we will take it to the Historic Preservation Board of Review. And I think at that point, they could address whether it needs a certificate of appropriateness, because this is a blanket overlay. Certainly a new swimming pool would not probably be under their largest concerns of alteration on the property, but they would have a chance to review it.
Okay, thanks, Jackie.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas?
Yes, I just want to thank the petitioners for bringing this forward. This is absolutely a jewel in Monroe County's crown, and I'm really thrilled that they're interested in pursuing this. I think this is a great use for the property, and preserving it for future generations is phenomenal. So I'm grateful to them for their hard work.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to turn to the petitioner, the petitioner's representative, if they're here. If you would be so kind as to make yourself known by raising your hand or pressing *9 on the phone. Do we see anyone? Okay, I'd like to ask if there are members of the public who are attending via Zoom. There's no one here in the chamber via Zoom or by telephone who would like to speak in favor of this petition. If so, raise your hand or press *9. Okay, are there members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, raise your hand or press *9. I think only staff is on the call now. So we come back to members of the Plan Commission. Are there any further questions or discussion or motion?
Yes, in the matter of RAZ 22-6, rezone request to add HP overlay, I move that we forward the petition with a positive recommendation to the Board of Commissioners based on the petition's compatibility with the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan and waive the final hearing.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to send a favorable recommendation of RAZ 22-6 and a historic preservation overlay with a waiver of final hearing. Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas, Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Jeff McKim.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
Lovely. Now I know that we're going to have staff reports, right? Are there any further reports from staff
I do not have anything.
and Mr. Schilling? Okay, so are there any objections to adjourning or?
Move for adjournment.
Second.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I know it was tough, but thank you.